Hello, everyone, and welcome to Around the County with Supervisor Jim Desmond. Today, we're going to be talking about homelessness. And homelessness has been a problem for the county of San Diego and the entire state of California. And so we're going to continue that conversation, but we're also going to include harm reduction programs that are going to be rolled out here shortly by the county, funded by the state. The two most controversial parts of that program, clean syringe handouts and also smoking material and supply handouts. In 2021, your San Diego County Board of Supervisors voted 3-2 to bring forth a harm reduction program to San Diego County. I was one of the two that voted against it because I think this actually does more harm than good. Now, I know there's some that out there will say that this harm reduction is a good thing. Later, we're going to have on the show the mayor of Escondido, Dane White, and he and I are going to be expressing what we came together on, along with the other representatives from North County, about the harm reduction program that's going to be actually staged initially in Escondido and in Oceanside. So we wanted to bring forward and let you know what that is, providing people who are living on the streets with some things that hopefully helps them from harming themselves. But we're also going to include sterile syringes, personal disposal containers for those syringes, safe injection and wound care supplies. There's some good things in there as well, as far as naloxone, which is used for overdoses, people that are overdosing of fentanyl test strips, condoms, educational material, which is fine. But one of the more controversial items also going to be part of this harm reduction handout program are safe smoking supplies, pipe covers, mouthpieces, foil sheets, clean glass stems, and bubblers. Primarily, the focus is going to be on the syringes and the smoking supplies that the county is giving out. We're going to take a quick break, and right after that break, we're going to be speaking with the mayor of Escondido, Dane White.
Is your family prepared for a disaster? San Diego County is vulnerable to many types of disasters: wildfires, earthquakes, flooding, and tsunamis, just to name a few. While we cannot predict when the next disaster will occur, it is always a good time to be prepared for the future. Do you know what you and your family will do during the next emergency? One of the best ways you can be prepared is to develop a family disaster plan. This plan should include a drawing of your home's floor plan with the location of doors, windows, and any other possible escape routes, where fire extinguishers and utilities such as gas and water valves, including your main circuit breaker, are located and how and when to shut them off. A list of items in your emergency supply kit and where it's located in case you need to evacuate quickly. At least 2 identified meeting places, one outside of your home and one outside of your neighborhood in case you and your family get separated. Important phone numbers and emergency contacts, one in the area and one out of your area who you can call in an emergency. Make sure everyone memorizes these numbers too. It is also important to consider any unique needs in your household when developing your plan. Do you have young children? Do you care for older adults? Are there any family members in your home who have access and functional needs, who may need specific medical devices and equipment? Do you have pets, service animals, or livestock? And lastly, don't just talk about it. Put your plan into action. During an emergency, you may not have much time to evacuate. Make sure you practice your plan with all of your family, pets too, at least twice a year so that everyone is familiar with it. To get started on your own family disaster plan, visit readysandiego.org.
Well, hello again, everyone. Welcome back to Around the County with Supervisor Jim Desmond. I've got a very special guest here today. The newly elected mayor of Escondido, Mayor Dane White, is with us today. Well, Dane, you were actually born and raised in Escondido, and here you are, the mayor now. So tell us a little bit about yourself so the viewers get a better understanding of who you are and what you're trying to do.
Will do. So yeah, Dane White, born and raised in Escondido, recently elected back in November to the office of the mayor after serving 2 terms on the Escondido High School Board. I am 5th generation Escondido. Family came to Escondido shortly after the city was incorporated in 1888, and one of 5. Most of us still all live in Escondido. Lots of cousins, aunts, uncles, everybody's still there. We love it there. I went to private school in town growing up, Light and Life Christian School, and then went to Escondido High School my freshman year. I did go the first 2 weeks of my sophomore year. I was suspended for stealing the principal's golf cart, and was then subsequently sent to a boarding school out in Stockton, Missouri. Independent fundamentalist Baptist boarding school, where I spent 19 months of my life until I got my first visit back home, where I ran away. I am the only successful runaway from the program to have then graduated high school.
Wow.
So I spent that summer kind of on the run between San Diego and Utah, landed in Panguitch, Utah, tiny town of about 1,000 people. Ended up turning myself in there. My grandfather adopted me, finished high school there. Shortly after high school, I was arrested and taken to juvenile hall for stealing my personal belongings out of a vehicle that had been impounded. I didn't know it was a state-owned impound lot, which means it was state property, not my property. And
The big fence didn't give it away?
no. Well, it's used to hopping fences. That was no problem. You'd think they'd protect it a little more, keep people out, but whatever. It took some skateboard and some CDs, and that was enough to land me in juvenile hall, where I spent the remainder of the summer that year. And then when it was time to get released, my grandfather, my mom, nor my dad would come pick me up. So I became property of the state of Utah. I was placed in a foster home in Cedar City, which isn't far from St. George. Spent about a year in foster care, did really well for myself, got out, immediately went back to drugs and alcohol, which is what had got me in all that trouble to begin with. And from basically 18 to 21, spent my time going back and forth between Cedar City and Escondido. At one point, sleeping behind the 7-Eleven in Escondido on the corner of Country Club in Center City. Going back, I lived in a shed on the side of somebody's house in Panguitch for a while. And again, just going back and forth when I could get enough money to buy a Greyhound ticket and run out of resources in one area, I'd go to another and sort of mooch off of people until they got sick of me and go back to the other. But it wasn't until I was 21, I guess shortly before my 21st birthday, in Utah, I had gotten in trouble again for public intoxication, and a judge finally told me, look, you need to go to rehab. Instead of going to rehab, see, I happened to disagree with that decision at the time. So instead of going to rehab, I said, I'll just never come back to Utah. And I went back to California. Shortly after that, I had an experience that changed my life. I had overdosed one night, I heard a voice clear as day tell me, you're going to die if you don't change. Wow. So 2 weeks later, I checked into the North County Inland Regional Recovery Center. It's on the corner of Ashen, Washington and Escondido. 6-month outpatient rehab. Did my time there, graduated, and during that time, I ended up meeting my now father-in-law, became really, really good friends with him. He happens to also serve on the Escondido City Council still, but he befriended me. I ended up meeting his youngest daughter, who is now my wife, started going to church, ended up serving a mission for the Mormon church, came back, we got married almost immediately, and that's when I decided I wanted to get involved somehow. I just didn't know, so I leveraged whatever resources I could to put together a little campaign for the school board. Was successful, ran again, was successful, and then decided the opportunity was there to run for mayor, so I took it.
Wow, this is only the second show that we're doing, but you've got to be the most interesting guest. I think maybe you're going to take the cake for all of them. That's what a history and a past, and it just goes to show anybody can be mayor, if you do the right things. So you've had this lived experience of being homeless and being, on the other side of the law and everything else and turning your life around. I mean, we've got a lot of people out there out on the streets now that we'd love to give them that same opportunity. So from that perspective, I know we're going to be talking about harm reduction later, but what do you want to tell people from that perspective of how we can deal with the homeless and how we should be, where we're going right, where we're going wrong, and what your ideas as mayor of Escondido, how you're trying to solve that problem? Yeah, absolutely. And I can tell you all the things we're doing wrong right now. Unfortunately, the state of California and even the county of San Diego sort of taken this one-sided approach of housing first, which can be successful in some cases, but the vast majority of the time it's not. I know everybody likes to point to studies from the past, but if you look at the present and the results coming out right now, clearly that approach is not the best for everybody. For me specifically, what it took was my mom was willing to give me a futon in her garage as long as I was willing to go to rehab. I had my basic needs met. I had a shelter, had a bed, I had access to a shower. At the time, I had my own car anyways. But other than that, I wasn't afforded much else. My mom was willing to help meet my basic needs, but the rest was on me. The onus was on me to actually progress and become successful. And some of the things that we're not doing now, for instance,
The treatment that I received from the North County Inland Regional Recovery Center, that building's now a 7-Eleven, and nothing came to Escondido to replace it. So the services that we have been providing in the past aren't necessarily there anymore today. And then instead of replacing them with outpatient treatment, or what we really need is more long-term inpatient treatment, we're saying the best we can do right now is a mobile delivery service for needles and crack pipes. It's absolutely absurd to me.
Well, yeah, and as you point out, unfortunately, even as a county supervisor, our hands are pretty much tied in trying to get people into the help they need. And it's just like you had that opportunity to get that help. Unfortunately, there's so many roadblocks that we have right now with the Boise decision and with the state of California, and particularly with the dollars that are coming from the state and the federal government. As you mentioned, Housing First. Housing First is a one-size-fits-all, and if you don't follow this Housing First program, then you don't get any monies. And basically, Housing First allows the drug and alcohol use on site, and it doesn't require treatment. So even if you get someone, it was nice that your mom had that, put that over your head and said, you can stay here as long as you're in treatment. I think that's exactly what government has to do. Government has to say to people, we will give you a place to stay. We will pay for your groceries, pay for your rent, pay for your social work, pay for your medicine if you are in a program or a treatment program for mental health or getting off of drugs or getting cleaned up. We have that capacity, but unfortunately, we don't have the political will to get that done, or the ability because of all the laws that have been put in place.
Yeah, I genuinely don't understand this. When you look at the billions and billions of dollars the state of California has invested, only to end up with 75% of the country's homeless population, you would think, okay, this isn't working. But that's not it at all. And for Escondido, one of the biggest issues that we have as a city, so number one, we have our own financial issues at the city. But putting that aside, I'm hesitant to take dollars from the county because I could build a shelter with your money right now. But once it's constructed, it's not reserved for the homeless in Escondido. No. It is a regional shelter. This is a problem within the region, but I can't look at this as a regional problem or look at regional solutions. That's not my job. I would right now if I had the funds, I would build a shelter in Escondido simply for the fact of being able to enforce an encampment ban as long as I could prevent an influx from coming in. But again, we have our own financial difficulties. That's ultimately the goal for Escondido is whatever it takes to be able to enforce an encampment ban. And let me say this. Whenever you bring up encampment bans, right, the so-called homeless advocates come out and they say that Dane or Supervisor Desmond just wants to jail these homeless people. When the fact of the matter is the jail's not going to take them now anyways. That's not even a valid argument. And that's not what I'm proposing. I'm saying, look, I've got to be able to protect my streets. I've got to be able to have a clean city. And in order to do that, I need an encampment ban that's able to be enforced through this shelter. Now, once that's there, absolutely, if people are willing to take the next step to be independent and successful, I'm willing to help them out in any way that I can. And I haven't met a single person in my community who has said, no, I'm not open to helping them once they're in there.
Absolutely. And you're hitting the nail right on the head. The fact that, unfortunately, it is a regional problem, I guess, with the homeless. And to say that from the county's perspective or from my perspective, it's almost like whack-a-mole, where one city, starts to make some headway on servicing the homeless or making it uncomfortable, I guess, for a homeless to be there. They go someplace else in the county. And unfortunately, that's been happening. I know get a lot of jurisdictions say, well, you're just shipping them to me. We're not doing that. We're not doing that at all. Yeah. It's like, well, those people are just sending them here. That's not really the case. So it's really good to, hear your perspective on this and coming through and going through all the things that you've had to do. But you're absolutely right. Even with the Housing First, it does help some people. It does help some. But our homeless numbers went up by 22% last year over the previous year. So if that's what's happening, let's at least try other avenues or try, to get people into the helps and services. And even, people don't like to hear this, but to do it involuntarily. Some people who are just living their lives on the streets and they're constantly, searching for the next high and they're just addicted to drugs and alcohol. I think it's more humanitarian and more compassionate to get them into the help. And if we have to force that, we have to do it. But maybe we start small. We start with the worst off and get them into help. But right now, our hands are tied by, state and local government that don't allow us to do that.
Yeah, no doubt. One of the best things that ever happened to me was that judge telling me you need to go to rehab. Right? Yeah. That's what initiated this whole change. Originally, I know I said I wasn't going to go and I moved and all that. But when I had that experience that sort of woke me up to reality, that was my thought. I'm supposed to go do this. Maybe I should. And one of the things that is so unfortunate, in the city of Escondido, we have an organization called Solutions for Change that, depending on your metrics for success, they are arguably much more successful than any Housing First program, but we're barred from partnering with them because they require accountability and sobriety. I'm not saying that that's the approach for every single person on the street, but this approach of housing first and that's it isn't working, and we've got to find other solutions.
Yeah, unfortunately, the federal and state government have cut off funds to entities that require sobriety. Dane, I completely agree with you. We got to be able to fund other sources. Housing First may work for some, but we got to be able to, get funding to other entities and maybe convince the federal or state government that, hey, we got to try other things. You wouldn't do this if you're trying to fix something at your house. If something doesn't work, well, then let's try something else. And I think that's where we really need to get to. All right, we're going to take a quick break here, and we'll come back and we'll talk about the harm reduction program that the state and unfortunately the county have been putting forward.
I'm an ex-drug dealer, and I'll be your sub today. I did 18 and a half years in prison for selling drugs. So everyone put on your gloves. Please place it under the microscope. Can you see anything different as a pill? No.
No.
No? 2 milligrams of fentanyl can be lethal. Now, a lethal dose is in here. Who gets it, I won't know.
Fentanyl is being mixed into everything now. I used to be a drug dealer. There's only one thing that will save somebody's life. That is naloxone nasal spray.
I used to deal drugs when I was in school. Fentanyl, it's cheap, it's potent, and it's profitable.
Why would drug dealers put a lethal dose of fentanyl in drugs if they know it's so harmful?
Really just all about the money.
I was just telling them, be careful and only take what's prescribed to you. The last thing I want to see is my friend on the t-shirt, you know what I mean?
I just didn't realize that one pill could change your whole life.
More kids should know. More kids should know.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back. We are here with Dane White, the mayor of Escondido, and we're going to continue to talk about homelessness and homelessness issues. In particular, we're going to be talking about harm reduction programs that are being brought by the state of California and the county of San Diego. So just last week, the representatives and elected officials across North County from the 78 corridor, Escondido, San Marcos, Vista, Oceanside, and Carlsbad, we all got together on the steps of Vista City Hall and came together and said, we are not in agreement with harm reduction. You know, it sounds good, but basically what it allows is the county, through the state and state funding, is going to be giving out syringes to people. Also, smoking material, safe smoking supply, mouthpieces, foil sheets, clean glass stems. They're doing some good things as well. Naloxone, in case this person is overdosing from fentanyl test strips, condoms, those types of things. But I think what really got to most of us is these syringes and safe smoking supplies. So, Dane, I'm against the county giving these things out. And your city, actually, you went the extra step and put together a proclamation to say, we do not want this in our city. So why don't you tell us about it?
Yeah, and you know what's interesting? When we took that up at the council meeting, about 50 people came and voiced their opposition. There was only 3 comments in favor of this, and they didn't give an explanation as to why they were in favor. Ultimately, we're opposed because this is not the answer we need for Escondido. Harm reduction seeks to reduce the stigma surrounding substance abuse disorder, but here's the problem with that. Stigma is what saved my life. Somebody telling me that the way you're living your life is not acceptable and you need to change is what changed my life. Removing the stigma and removing all the consequences from negative behavior will only serve to perpetuate the problem forever. In Escondido, our public works staff are already picking up 30 to 50 needles a week. Vast majority are found in our parks and open spaces. Simply giving out needles and crack pipes and meth pipes is not the answer and will not solve anything. You know, and I looked up some of the numbers. So the rate at which hepatitis and AIDS are transmitted in San Diego County for males is under 20%. For females, I believe is under 10%. So I don't understand exactly what this is supposed to be doing for that. I know they say it's meant to reduce the rate at which these things are transmitted, but I'm just not seeing this as the right choice.
Yeah, and to tell the other side, though, from the argument I've heard, actually from some of our medical professionals at the county, is, well, if they're going to be doing these and having these habits, at least let's give them the clean tools for which to do that so that it doesn't get exacerbated with infection and things like that. And another argument is, well, this will, at least we can meet people where they are, or we can, help them out where they are, and then maybe later we'll give them, they'll ask for more help. To me, I think you're right. And one of the messages that came out of that press conference that we did was that this is normalizing or condoning or accepting the fact that the drug use is okay. And it's not. And we learned that about 60 to 80% of the people that are on the streets are addicted to some types of drugs or alcohol. I actually spoke to somebody who had a similar circumstance to you, who actually got through this system and came out okay. But what he shared with me was the fact that when he was high, he did everything he could to get to that next high. He would rob, steal, cheat, steal from his grandmother, his parents, or whatever it took to get to that next high. And once you're in that drug-induced fog, is what he told me, once you're in that, you're not making clear decisions. And so you got to get out of that in order to make a change. By giving them more tools and cleaner pipes and things like that, that's just going to keep them in that drug-induced fog. We got to be able to turn that around. And I think it's harming people in many ways. One thing we did do, I'll tell you one of the things, a good thing that did come out of that, and I got reassurances from the county, is that when they do this harm reduction programs, when they come to Escondido and Oceanside, which are two of the cities that were named when they said they were going to roll this out, they are going to work with the cities and use your preferences. If you find something that you just do not want given out in your city, they're going to follow that. So let me know and make sure that we're going to hold their feet to the fire on this. But I think that your voices on this really rang through and came through, and hopefully we're going to get some better outcomes.
I'm glad to hear that. I really am glad to hear that, because ultimately these types of programs can work in certain circumstances. But when you look at what harm reduction actually is, and when the idea was conceived, this isn't it. And all the studies that they throw at us do not represent a mobile delivery service. With your own grant application says that they don't expect to get all the needles back. In fact, it says they expect 40,000 to be left in the community. But the most I can find being returned is 60%. So you're talking about 250,000 used needles left God knows where throughout the county. I just think that's unacceptable, especially in a city that's already got the problem to begin with.
Yeah, and we do not want to become like San Francisco, or Oakland, and then now LA is turning in this, and they have school kids walking along and knowing that they're having to dodge or skip over needles and things like that. It's we can do so much better. We've got so many resources. We can do a heck of a lot better.
I'm going to go back to one of the points I made about housing first. With harm reduction, we look at all these studies done in the late 80s and early 90s, but we're totally ignoring the current results we have, especially the results with all the major cities in our own state. It just isn't working. It's not working.
No. Well, and Seattle, I guess, has been using this harm reduction program, and it's just gotten worse. And I have to go back to the fact that our number of homeless went up by 22% in the last year. It's like, you can only beat your head against the wall so many times where you got to try something else. And this just, harm reduction is not the answer, in my opinion. And North County came out loud and clear, from the representatives that were there saying, this is not good. We don't want it here in North County. But we do want to help these people. We absolutely want to get them into the help we need. It's not just, throw them in jail or do something like that. Let's get them into the mental health services that a lot of them need and get them off of the drug drugs and alcohol.
I'm in complete agreement with you. Being in this position has brought me some haters that I previously didn't have to worry about in my life. But it's just interesting when you read some of the things that they put out there, that I hate homeless people and I want them to die because I don't want clean needles delivered out in the streets. And it's simply that my approach is much different and results-based. I do not want people to wake up in that cycle of addiction every day, frustrated because they can't get out of it, miserable, living in squalor is absolutely what I do not want for the people on the streets in Escondido or anywhere in general.
Yeah. Well, and I really think mental health is key to a lot of these things, to homelessness and most of the other tragedies we have in our county. But I think mental health treatment is where we really got to start moving to. Unfortunately, mental health clinics and hospitals were shut down. The state recently, they emptied out their jails. They emptied out their jails of people, and that's how we got such an influx of homelessness here throughout the state. And now they're emptying out their psychiatric hospitals, which is why we're getting sexually violent predators put back into our neighborhoods. We really got to change some of the characteristics. And this shouldn't be a Democrat or Republican. This is not a partisan issue. We all want to get these people into the help they need. We just got to have more and different tools instead of just the ones that are handed out by the state and federal government.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Dane. I really appreciate you being here today and sharing your insight. You've got such an interesting story, and here you're the mayor of Escondido, and it sounds to me like you're doing good things. You're on the right path, and hopefully we'll get some relief from the state and federal government, and we'll be able to help programs to get people the mental health treatment that they need.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks a lot, Dane.
Yeah.
I don't know why you're so sad. You've got a roof over your head.
Bro, you gotta stop with that depression stuff. That's a white people thing.
Escúchame, en esta casa, los hombres no lloran.
You alright?
It just feels like it's coming from everywhere.
Do you want to talk about it?
Thanks for hearing me out, bro. Appreciate it.
You can talk to me if you're feeling sad. Whenever you need to talk, I'm here, okay?
Driving under the influence is the #1 cause of death on American roadways. Not sure if you've had too much to drink? Then please don't drive.
Driving under the influence of drugs has the same consequences and can be just as dangerous as driving impaired due to alcohol. DUI doesn't just mean booze.
The Oceanside Police Department wants to remind you that law enforcement is out looking for impaired drivers. Don't risk losing your license, your car, your freedom, and possibly your life.
Designate a sober driver, take a ride service or the bus, or you'll be taking a ride straight to jail.
Remember, you drink, you drive, you lose.
You drink, you drive, you lose.
You drink, you drive, you lose.
Okay, well, welcome back. Well, we had a very interesting conversation there with the mayor of Escondido, Dane White. He is very animated, and you can tell very passionate about homelessness and homelessness issues, being homeless himself. He was given that opportunity to, live in his mother's garage, essentially, and go out and get services and get himself an education and eventually become the mayor of Escondido. These are the types of stories that we want to have for many more people that are homeless out there. Many more people need that help, need that push, need that edge, that helping hand to get them through. Unfortunately, we got to get people sober in the right frame of mind and thinking before they can really make those better choices for themselves so they can have a healthier lives. We're going to continue pushing for that effort, try to get people the most amount of mental health services and into care as best we can. Harm reduction, we don't think of giving clean syringes and giving pipe and smoking materials is the answer. So I really want to thank Dane for being here today. And I want to thank you for checking in and being around the county with Supervisor Jim Desmond. Contact my office anytime. Even if it's not even a county issue, we'll help you to get to the right place that you need. Thanks for checking in and be safe.